as you can see, I'm back in the old setup again, and yeah, obviously, getting right into this Shaman King review, one of the biggest things about the episode is we get a full look into Horohoro's past and just what pain he's been carrying on, which is that he supposedly killed the girl he loved, and yet despite it being, honestly, really no fault of his own other than being, I guess you could say, literally cursed his whole life, but by the pretty much by the lineage and legacy of his clan. It's of his tribe and tribe's heritage and whatnot. He still felt responsible, and I like how we can see very clearly how that formed the basis of who Horohoro would become, how Horohoro would become the character he is now. And as he carried that burden around as a reminder that he would never become that person ever again, yet at the same time, this fight with Callum showed that he's also been kind of denying that side of himself as well, as if it didn't exist. So for him, this fight was kind of about embracing all sides of who he was. Horohoro isn't just like the wolf or just the laid back fun-loving guy we all come to know. Both sides of him are Horohoro. He just needed to embrace both sides of himself, even if he considers one side a curse and the other like who he wants to be. With that said, for as much as I loved this backstory, though, it's also kind of another example of the 52 episodes given to the anime's production really straining it, because Horohoro's past has a lot of moments that I felt were good, but could have been amazing had they been given the time to breathe. Like, basically I'm saying Horohoro's backstory and adaptation kind of suffers from the My Hero Academia Season 5 problem, where between the flashback and the fight with Callum, it should have clocked in a little higher than 8 minutes for me. And honestly, I'm not even asking for even that much longer of length, honestly, but long enough where a moment can emotionally linger and allow it to stick longer with you. This is kind of a problem I've seen that seems to become apparent in a lot of anime adaptations nowadays, where it seems they're having trouble really balancing between adaptation and between actually adapting the source material and actually giving the source material the required emotion it needs, the required time in order for the emotion to stick. And I feel like that's kind of what's the problem here. I do like the backstory, but I felt there could have been weirdly so much more done to it to make it feel as impactful as it was to him, and just feel like what exactly Horohoro was feeling at that time, how conflicted how how so we could feel the same burden he was feeling, I guess you could say. And honestly, the first moment, and honestly, I felt this way when I was reading the manga too. But the moment I saw Damako, that's where I knew she had to be Kororo. Which, if there is any character I think has received a massive overhaul in this reboot, it is Horohoro and Kororo, as their connection and shared history really do make them way more fleshed out as characters than Horohoro just being the cool surfer, being the cool being the cool dude with the surf with the snowboard, and or Kororo being the cute chibi spirit. And in Damako's case, learning what happened to her and how she became one of the four, one with the forest, and one of the poker. It does show that ultimately it was more than coincidence that Kororo became Horohoro's guardian spirit. Whether it was because through the tribe or through Damako willing it herself. Damako knew the only way for Horohoro to really move beyond that part of himself, the part he feared, was to become his guardian spirit. Like, Danko was the only one who could pull him out of that darkness. And honestly, even though the adaptation of the backstory itself was a little lacking, seeing the actual reunion between Damako and Horohoro was handled amazingly. Like, I'm not gonna lie, seeing Kororo transform into Damako, I, I and seeing like Horohoro's reaction, I did get a little choked up. I did choke up a few tears at that moment. I'm not gonna lie, like it was something about that moment just really stuck with me. But yeah, after the fight with Callum, though, we move on to the jungle plans. And honestly, I loved Lyserg's smug ass attitude in this part of the episode, and the payoff with Opacho like tracking down Reneem. Like it's one of those things where I'm normally not a fan when an enemy is treated like a joke, but in this case, it does work well because, as Lyserg points out, like he pretty much kind of screwed himself over in this situation by showcasing his power to them in the earlier episode. Like if he hadn't done that and actually kept his power secret, then this tactic might have worked. But because he did show his hand, it did make him fairly predictable and easy to defeat. Like I'm just saying, like, dude, if you wanted this to work, you really shouldn't have showed them what kind of power you had. Because and I like how Lyserg's deduction skills and how his like background of being raised by a family of detectives and policemen did kind of like it kind of came into play with that. From there, though, we do get a full-on reveal of Opacho's power through a flashback explanation from Hal, and that it is very much the same as her power is very much the same as her power is very much mind reading, and it is very much the same as like as like Anna's as well. And not only is it like an example of really showing the emotional layers to Hal, with him so easily willing to even teach you about mind reading, but even funnier thing is he's like Hal isn't wrong either about the loneliness aspect. We have seen examples of what being able to read minds does to a person, to the point where it's almost a requirement that there are people around them who genuinely care, and for as weird as it is, for as like as much as Hal's whole thing is psychotic, it does show that how genuinely does he does in fact care for Opacho, which is actually a vast departure from the original anime. Looking at the manga and the reboot now, because it's like, it's one of those things where he does genuinely care for his comrades, because Opacho really did need someone to be there for him, and it just so happened to be Hal. Now, leading into the, of course, which that in itself also leads into the next fight of Nikrom versus Ren. And honestly, even though the pacing of this fight itself was a little too rushed for my liking, I really do appreciate how, even though Ren is beating Nikrom to a pulp for a lot of this fight, the entire fight in itself is basically Ren owning up to what he's done and just telling Nikrom to cut the bullshit. Hate me all you want. Come at me with your hatred. I'll take all of it. That's basically what Ren is saying throughout the entire fight of jumping into the fight with Nikrom, is that I know what you're feeling towards me. I know you hate me. So come at me. I'm willing to take it all. And the fact is, Ren can take it, because it's everything he's felt, and none of what Nikrom is feeling was foreign to Ren. Even with Ren readily admitting himself that he hasn't entirely fought back his own feelings of hatred. Honestly, I really like the lesson Ren was trying to instill in Nikrom about hatred with this episode, because it's probably the most realistic way on not only how to present hatred, but also how to deal with it. at least when it comes to the representation of it in anime, because one thing I think that honestly a lot of anime and a lot of manga have gotten wrong about hatred is that it can be simply defeated by having people around you, by having someone to talk to. And granted, that can help, but at the same time, there are also times where hatred can be such a strong and powerful emotion to the point where the only way to overcome it and move past it is to release it. And in the case of this episode, Ren was basically saying, if you hate me so much, focus all that hatred in this fight. Because Ren realized it was Ren realized that Necrom fighting him was the only way for him to overcome it. And honestly, not just Necrom, but he himself. This fight was kind of a necessity for both Necrom and Ren to kind of overcome their own hatreds, I think. But yeah, guys, that's pretty much all I got for this review. If you enjoyed the video, like, comment, subscribe. Follow me on Twitter, Analyst Crunchyroll. Be sure to hit the notification bell, subscribe button, and just share it with everyone, guys. Dark Knight of Anime, signing off. Later, everyone.